and all votes will be conducted with a recorded vote. Delegations will be attending today through teleconferencing, and we have 2 for our public agenda. And again, once I get the signal that those are available, we will go to them. I also want to draw your attention to a small adjustment that will be part of the public agenda item. There is a change in terms of time in one of the appendix, so please be aware that when I ask for a motion, that will be adjusted from 2 a.m. to 10 a.m. If anybody needs any clarity on that, just please ask. And I'm also going to give initially a gentle reminder that our topic is on licensing for this service. And I'm going to ask that members of council have their questions and their comments toward licensing. We have had many meetings on this topic. Council has had many opportunities to speak on the topic generally. We're going to focus on licensing today and what is in this report. So give me 1 second. I'll just check and see if our speakers are in. So I think we have Mr. Devon Hill on the line. Mr. Hill, are you there for me, please?
Council has had many opportunities to speak on the topic generally. We're going to focus on licensing today and what is in this report. So give me 1 second. I'll just check and see.
So while I wait for Mr. Hill to pull on, can you give me a motion, please, someone on the public agenda? The Mayor has moved that.
So moved, Hawkins.
Good, thank you. Thank you for that. And so I'll call the question. Is there anybody opposed? Hear from none. And could I ask you to consider the minutes now on July the 8th? Can I also have a motion on that, please?
I'll move, Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew. Is there any errors or omissions? Hearing from no one, is there anybody opposed? I'll consider that passed. Thank you very much. So I'll go now to Mr. Hill. Are you there, Mr. Hill?
Yes, Sam.
Oh, good. Nice to hear you. Voice, if you would mind, please identify yourself. You have had a chance previously to speak, so this will be a question-only session for you. You understand that, Mr. Hill?
I do.
Okay, good. Thanks very much. So if you would mind just stating your name and who you represent, then I'll turn the agenda over to the council.
Devon Hill, I'm with Freedom Catalyst Regina.
Thanks very much, sir. Questions of the delegation, please. I'm looking in the chat room. Councillor Bershani, you're up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So just, Mr. Hill, can you just refresh our memory in regards to what the concerns that you raised as you were speaking? Because I don't know if you finished your, or you may have finished, but I'm not sure. If you just elaborate on the concerns that you raised with this report through the chair.
The main concerns I brought up for this speech anyway was the fact that owners, to have an owner period involved with the body rub parlor is illegal as per the PSEPA prostitution laws. So if we're going to be licensing them, that's basically licensing illegal activity, which there's no other illegal activity that's licensed and sanctioned, therefore, in Canada. So that's a concern that I have, is that we're basically licensing illegal activity and therefore accepting it.
Okay. Through the chair, your comments on not licensing the workers. Can you elaborate, please?
Well, and in the report, it's saying that workers should not be licensed because concerns of confidentiality and stuff like that, which I can sympathize with. But on the other hand, there's major potential problems or concerns with that in terms of if there is any trafficking involved in situations like that. The purpose of licensing the workers is to ensure that they are there on their own, they're doing this on their own volition, and there's no trafficking involved, and that the police have good, regular communication with them, so that if they do desire to get out or need help getting out, that they are licensed and the police have their information and they're regularly talking to them. If the onus is put on the owners to do that, and if there is a trafficking situation, I mean, that's illegal activity, and so we're basically expecting criminals, in a sense, to comply with the law. And they're already not complying with the law. So why would we give them the right to do that, in a sense? We should be protecting the workers themselves. And that's exactly why PSEPA came in, was to protect the workers. And it made it's illegal for the owners to be even involved at all. So we shouldn't be giving them the licensing opportunity, because they're not even supposed to be involved at all. And so that's why I was saying that there should be, if it's true that there's no owners involved, and it's just the girls doing it on themselves, it should be the workers licensed themselves. And in my opinion, that there should be some kind of statement involved saying that owners are not involved, that they will sign something and say, we're doing this all on our own. And if there is any sort of deception or lying related to that, there are other licensing bylaws around Canada that if you do state like lies, basically, that you lose the ability to have your license for X number of years.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else from council who would like to ask a question? No one else has joined the chat. Mr. Hill, thanks for your time. You may exit the meeting now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next delegation is Jane Gatinier. Jane, are you with me?
Hello?
Hi, Jane. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. If you would please introduce yourself, who you represent. I'll give you 5 minutes for a presentation. Questions may follow. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Dear City Council members, I'd like to begin by, first of all, thanking you for the restrictions that you've placed on the BRE locations from our residential and MAC zones. I believe these boundaries will serve to increase safety and comfort for the general public, and I'm grateful. The concern remains, however, that body rubs are still allowed in Regina, and consequently harms can still occur. While many regulations have been suggested in the quest to this end, at this present time, the two most significant aspects seem to be problematic, both of which I would like to speak to: licensing and enforcement. While the Protection of Communities and Exploited Persons Act removed the judicial prosecutions from from sex trade workers in order to prevent further victimization of the many who are coerced and trapped, the Immigration Refugee Protection Act, Section 118, ensured that purchasing intimate physical services, as John's, still remains a crime, and managing or profiting from this work is still a crime under Canadian law. So therefore, if we were to license customers or owners, that would be a crime against our Canadian national law, IRPA. So how then would Regina Police Service be able to enforce this current Canadian law if these crimes being committed are illegally licensed or condoned by our city authorities? Licensing workers, however, would be legal and would hinder human trafficking, and it could enhance tracking and protection. Since anonymity is the expressed concern over licensing workers, I would suggest that the need to combat human trafficking is greater. So I'm asking that you do not allow the workers to operate without a license and not allow the operators to be licensed. The second topic is enforcement. Over recent years, the majority of body rub establishment locations were already in violation of bylaws that did not appear to be enforced. The most thorough, detailed, and perfected regulations or licensing would be pointless if not enforced. Even the most prolific violations could not be discovered or enforced if there was weak or limited oversight and accountability. The most troubling human rights violations can flourish if there is inadequate oversight. If the police checkups are restricted to pre-booked times only, this would serve to guarantee periods of police absence. These unprotected periods would be a huge liberty. They would prevent any degree of discovery of crime, or actual protections needed to the workers would be muted. Any abuses or human trafficking would be guaranteed to be unpoliced and then covered in time prior to a pre-scheduled police visit. Accountability can only happen if members of law enforcement are able to perform unannounced checkups, or in other words, if their hands are untied. So I would like to request that our police department be authorized to attend and routinely inspect unannounced.
Is that it, Ms. Gettier?
That's it.
Okay, thank you for your thoughts. I'll ask council now if they have any questions of you.
Thank you.
Ms. Gadinger, there are nobody signing in to have questions. I think you were very clear and very concise. I appreciate that. You may exit the meeting now and we'll carry on with the actual report. Have a good day.
Thank you, and you too.
Thank you. So at this point in time, I'm going to turn the agenda over to the administration. They're going to do a brief presentation on the topic. I think it's going to be led by Mr. Wary. Mr. Wary, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Good morning, everyone. I'll introduce the report and summarize the contents, and then Ms. Schakowsky and Mr. Kalman will do a presentation which will outline the specifics of the proposed licensing plan for this industry. So, as has been referenced earlier in the meeting, policy direction was provided by City Council, including licensing of body rub establishments only, and not workers, but with requirements for the establishments to be responsible to obtain identifying information from workers, ensure workers are of legal age and legally eligible to work in Canada, and ensure that workers receive training in safe practices and community resources. Also included in the policy direction provided by Council was a plan to limit operating hours and require compliance with health and safety standards. So the report in front of you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, has the recommendations, and those include licensing of the establishments, requirements for workers, reporting requirements, health and safety requirements, and limiting hours of operation. The report contains each of those topics are covered in detail under specific headings. There's a jurisdictional review that is in Appendix A, and then I would also refer you to Appendix B, which is the recommended licensing requirements that would go into, if approved by committee and council, that would go into the licensing bylaw. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Schakowsky and Mr. Kalman to do the presentation to go into the details of the proposed licensing
Thank you.
system. Thank you.
And whenever you're ready, you may begin. Who's ever going to start?
Okay. Just waiting for the presentation to come up. Okay, good morning. We are here to present to you the proposed licensing program for body rub establishments, or BREs, as they will be referred to in this presentation. So administration has been reviewing options for the regulation of body rub establishments since 2018. And early in the process, it was determined that a combined zoning and licensing framework would provide the best results to address concerns identified by council, residents, and those participating in the industry. The goals were to provide a framework that would reduce harm and increase safety not only for the workers, the owners, and the patrons, but for the community as well. To minimize community nuisances and to protect the integrity of the neighborhoods where they would operate. Council approved the zoning bylaw amendments in April of 2020, where BREs were allowed as a permitted use in heavy and light industrial zones, prescribing separation distances and establishing a distinction from therapeutic massages. So as mentioned previously, safety has been one of the primary considerations for BRE, and the regulations within the proposed licensing program support this focus. The licensing program will establish regulations for the licensing of owners and operators, prescribe the information that owners must obtain and store for all workers, education sessions for owners, operators, and the workers. It includes general building requirements, regulations for patrons, and hours of operation.
All BRE owners would be required to obtain a BRE license on an annual basis. The owners and operators would be required to submit government-issued identification containing legal name and date of birth showing that they are 18 years or older, a list of aliases or pseudonyms. They must be legally able to work in Canada and provide business ownership documentation. All applicants must have an approved development permit as well. The owners and operators must complete the certificate of approval process through the Regina Police Service, including a criminal record check, and may consist of an interview with the police. And they must provide proof of attendance of the education program as well. Upon fulfillment of these requirements, they will be required to submit their payment fees as well. Workers are not required to obtain a license, however. The owners are required to maintain information for all workers and provide to the city or the Regina Police Service upon request. This information includes the worker's legal name and date of birth, confirming that they are 18 years or older, lists of aliases or pseudonyms, eligibility to work in Canada, certificate of approval from the Regina Police Service, and the proof of completion of the required education program. The education program will be mandatory for all owners, operators, and workers, and will need to be attended these sessions annually. The sessions will be facilitated by a third party and include participation from the city staff as well as the Regina Police Service. Course material is focused on ensuring safety and providing resources that will include discussions on basic sexual health, personal safety while working in the industry, how to identify human trafficking risks, overdose awareness and naloxone administration, sexual assault programs, violence reporting and safe shelters, how to exit the industry if desired, bylaw regulations regarding BREs. Content will be updated and maintained annually to address any emerging issues arise and feedback from the participants as well.
Okay, because building requirements are included in various provincial regulations and other city bylaws, we've included a requirement that BRE licenses may be suspended or revoked for violations of any of these laws, and focus the building requirements for the licensing program on increasing personal safety. To promote safe access, all entrances must be well lit and free from obstruction. For added safety within the building, There shall be no locking mechanisms on any interior doors, and panic alarms must be installed in or within close access to all treatment rooms. In addition, to assist in determining who has posted an ad, all advertising, including signage at the establishment, must include the license number. Other regulations proposed in the licensing program include rules for patrons. These rules include that they must provide proof that they are 18 years of age or older. They must not appear to be intoxicated by drugs or alcohol, and patrons may only use the front door for entry and exit. Body rub establishments will not be permitted to operate 24 hours a day and must remain closed between the hours of 2 a.m. and 10 a.m. And a minimum of 2 workers must be in attendance at the establishment at all times. So these proposed licensing requirements, in addition to the zoning requirements already approved by council, meet the framework objectives of harm reduction, increased safety, minimizing community nuisances, and protecting the integrity of neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Wary, any closing comments?
Mr. Chair, but we're certainly happy to answer questions.
And before I ask council to please log into the chat, I just have one question just on clarity. Is there a review process to this? In other words, a year or so from now, will council hear how things have operated?
I think that would make sense, Mr. Chair, because of the nature of this licensing program, if approved. It's something that's very new for the city, so I think that would make sense for us to report back through committee and council as to the status.
Good, thanks for that. So I definitely have speakers. And Andrew, it looks like you're first up. Go ahead, please.
Actually, I think Lori was there before me.
Oh, sorry. I thought that was from before. Laura, you go ahead. No, I was right.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, is it Andrew? I think it was Andrew. Was it?
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't see your name from before.
That's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm just going to see if the camera is going to cooperate with me. Well, for starters, I just want to thank administration for the hard work. I think this is a great opportunity for council to demonstrate a commitment to dealing with a very complex social issue from a community well-being standpoint rather than criminalization, which really hasn't worked. There have been some concerns raised by those in the industry. For instance, the requirement to have 2 operators. So to administration, what if it's a solo owner-operated enterprise? How would that be dealt with if there's only one person working there?
So, Mr. Wary, either you or staff just go ahead and respond in whatever order you want.
Yes, I think for a lot of the technical questions like this, I will refer them to Ms. Schakowsky to respond to directly. Mr. Chair, thanks.
Thanks. Go ahead, Ms. Schakowsky.
Through the chair, our concern, because the body rub establishments would be operating in the industrial area where there was less traffic, that it would be better for the safety of those working that 2 individuals were in attendance, and that could be whether it be a security guard and a worker, administration staff or receptionist, etc.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair, if I could ask I have a follow-up to that. So in the event that it's determined that one of the legally operating facilities in this new area only has 1 operator, would there be a voluntary compliance initially, and then if they did not have an additional person working there, they could lose their license? Is that correct?
Through the chair, if it were a requirement in the bylaw, yes, that would be the result.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair, you had mentioned in the presentation, and the report makes this clear, that some form of identification will be required of patrons. Is it simply a matter of showing that ID, or is it logged and recorded in any capacity?
Through the chair, it would just be showing the identification.
Okay, thank you. In terms of Naxalon and overdose prevention, will there be instructional material made available in other languages, considering what we know about those working in this industry?
Through the chair, yes, there would be. What we're working on is with a third party that would create more opportunity to provide different languages. So the third party will be instructed to have it in multiple languages.
Okay, thank you. And with this licensing system, when it comes into effect, what will be the time frame for existing enterprises to comply with all of these new rules? Through the chair.
Through the chair, our recommendation would be that it become effective on January 1 of 2021.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair, I'm not sure if this is an undertaking or an amendment, but I'll just state what I'm looking for here, and I can receive guidance from the chair or from administration. But what I want to see in the education program is something very specific. And the intention here is that the education program include a basic introduction to employment standards, occupational health and safety, and immigration rights and protections. This is somewhat alluded to in the overview, but I'm insisting that it's very specific. Will administration require an amendment to put this into the training program? Through the chair.
Thanks for that. On that one, Mr. Weary, I'll go to you, please.
Mr. Chair, I think the better way to deal with that would be through an undertaking. We wouldn't recommend becoming too prescriptive about this type of a program, but certainly take the views of Councillor Stevens into account when building that program, and certainly would be something that we would report back to Committee on Council on.
Councillor Stevens, I would agree with that. Are you good with that?
That sounds great. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
In terms of the rationale for that, and this is really speaking to the delegates, when this goes through, arguably this will be even more policed and enforced than it has been in the past. There will be occupational health and safety. There will be employment standards. We'll see bylaw, a program integrity unit at the provincial level dealing with immigration rights. There are more vectors for the workers in this industry to highlight exploitation and abuse than they did before, in addition to the Regina Police Service. So I think this is making it more robust. I'm going to leave it at that, and I'll yield the floor to other members of council.
Thank you for your thoughts. Councillor Brashani, next up.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So first things first, for legal, just a question around licensing. So as it is written, that no one is allowed to live off the avails of others. Can I just get from legal, how then are we allowed to license owners? Through the chair.
Mr. Weary? Please.
Mr. Chair, we are alive to the issue of the potential for overlap of criminal code and the licensing provisions. We've looked at that fairly carefully. What we would propose in the bylaw is that a business licensing bylaw aimed at worker safety, first of all, does not legalize illegal activity which may occur in one of these licensed establishments. So that's clear. It will not duplicate or prevent the enforcement of the criminal code. And it will allow the city to revoke a license if a criminal investigation reveals a violation of the criminal code. So we're alive to this issue, and our recommendation is that it is possible for these businesses to be licensed in the way that's proposed here without running afoul of the criminal code. But we do acknowledge that if there is a business that oversteps the bounds, that there is ability for us to revoke a license, and it would be conditional on the businesses complying with the law.
Thank you. Councillor Shannon?
Thank you. So if we revoke a license through the chair, then and say, what is the next steps from there when we revoke a license? And then the second part to my question, and prevent them from opening up another company after the license has been revoked into a new corporation. What protection have we got in this bylaw for that? Through the chair?
Mr. Mayor?
We would have to look at who the principal operator of the business would be. That would be part of the background check that would be done by the Regina Police Service. I wouldn't want to get too far into the details or hypotheticals here, but that would be part of the vetting process that would be done. Some of these will be sole proprietors running their own business. Others will be corporate entities. So we would need to determine who the principals of the businesses would be, and then we would have the opportunity to do corporations branch searches to determine who the principals of any new companies that are set up to run these would be. But there's no perfect plan to prevent that from happening, but there are controls that are in place. We would work in collaboration with the Regina Police Service to do the best we could to prevent that from happening.
Thank you. Councillor Shannon?
Okay. Through the chair, the principal operator, who is actually getting the criminal record check then? Like if it's a corporation, who is absolutely then, who are we working with who would be the person that is getting the criminal record check? Through the chair.
It would be the principals of the company. So that would be the starting point. I'd maybe look to Ms. Shakowski to see if the project team has any further detail on that we can provide the committee today.
Ms. Shakowski, please.
Through the chair, that would be the owner and or the operator. So if it were perhaps the owner was an individual that was not in the building, and there was somebody else operating the offices or the establishment, those would also have to undergo the certificate of approval process through the Regina Police Service as well.
Thank you. So just to be clear, the owner, if the owner is in some other country and the operator is here, they would both have to get a criminal record check through the chair?
Through the chair, yes, that is correct.
Okay. Was there any discussion through the chair that a criminal record check be every 6 months to ensure that they are actually residents residing in Canada for at least 6 months? Any discussion around that rather than yearly through the chair?
Through the chair, there had been some discussion, but in the current licensing schemes that we operate with the city, we provide only annual licenses. And with the outreach that City and Regina Police Service intend to be doing, we'd be in contact with those individuals throughout the year.
Okay. Okay, so I guess I'd like to have an amendment, if I could, to the licensing of the owners. That the certificate of approval from RPS is every 6 months through the chair.
Okay, I'll let the deputy clerk get that up. And while she's doing that, Councillor Bashani, would you like to elaborate, or should I turn it over to others to comment?
Sure. I will elaborate. I have this duration of the whole body rubs. I've been in discussion with an individual who out of the city of Toronto that works as an inspector. He's done this for over 10 to 12 years. Some of the recommendations I'll be bringing forward today are exactly cited for those reasons. One of them, and I think I'll leave it with legal, but was the fact that a corporation will close and another one will open, and it doesn't take very long for them to do that. The second one is that the recommendation that this be done every 6 months, as then we know that they are as the Canadian border standards, you have to be here for at least 6 months to prove residency. So that would be something that if there was an owner that is away and only comes once a year at least, we are then, I think, working with the owner, having them responsible to know what's going on, but also understanding the business, but for safety as well, and any criminal activity that could be going on anywhere else. So I'll leave it there.
Thanks very much. So I'm going to try this process so that I don't lose. There's a number of people that are already in line for the main motion. So I'm simply going to go down the line and ask if there's anybody who wishes to comment on this amendment. And I'm going to do so by beginning with Councillor Ward 1, Barbara Young. Do you wish to speak to this amendment?
No.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hawkins, do you wish to speak to the amendment?
Thank you, no comment.
Thank you. Councillor Stevens.
Yes, I just need further clarification on how the every 6 months certification process does anything. I really don't understand what effect this will have.
So I think you're asking that of Councillor Bashani. Go ahead.
Thank you. With following up with the criminal records check, what we're doing is we're ensuring that these owners are ensuring that they're not involved in any criminal activity across wherever they're located. And I think for us, we want to ensure that our business owners, the owners that we're saying that are going to be operating these, that they're clean and they are not involved in any human trafficking, organized crime, which we know that these can be involved with. So the recommendation is that these owners then have to be present. They'd have to actually be here in person and to do the criminal record check. So back in Canada.
Thank you. Councillor Stevens.
That's all. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Fundura, do you wish to comment?
Yes, I do. Just curious about the, just going to bring the camera. Just curious about the ownership. If someone camera doesn't want to work further, so I'm just going to stay off of it. Ownership of a company in Canada, if someone is overseas, what's the, can someone explain what's the guidelines or what's the priority, what's the conservation talking about? You have to be in Canada for 6 months to vote or to own or be a Canadian citizen. Is that something that falls into this? That is to understand how can someone from out of the country, not Canadian, own a company?
So we're a little bit off topic, but to the amendment that's before us, if I could ask the administration to respond. Mr. Ware, do you want to do that?
I'm not sure I can provide a complete answer to the councillor's question. A lot of this will be information that will be in the possession of the police service. We will be relying on their police information network to inform this this process. So I can't really speak for the police, but I do know that their database is fairly extensive, and we would rely on that for some of those types of questions to be resolved. where possible. So it is a complicated question, and we will try, because of the number of businesses that likely are in existence and may continue, that between ourselves and the police service, we should be able to keep an eye on the corporate ownership and who the owners and operators are. But we'd have to do it on a case-by-case basis. So I'm not sure it assists with the amendment that's been brought forward, but certainly I think the thing that's different about this than other types of licensing that we do is that we will be working in very close collaboration with the police service on some of these things. And as I have said previously, if it's established that there is a legal activity that's being carried out by one of these license holders, there are provisions, it's a condition of the license that they be operating lawfully. So we would have the ability to suspend the license and then take more aggressive enforcement from there.
Thanks for that answer, Councillor Fundera. To the notion of 6 months versus 1 year, do you have any further questions?
No, Mr. Chair, no, I don't. I appreciate you letting me ask this question. Thank you.
Okay, and so Councillor Bryce, do you have a comment or question?
Yes, I do. I just have a question. So we're saying the criminal record check needs to be done every 6 months. So what if something shows up on the criminal record check? Does that mean the license is full?
Yes, potentially, depending on the nature of the violation, it could form the basis of license being revoked. Correct.
Thank you. Councillor Bryce?
Thank you. Thank you. That's no question.
Good. Councillor Mancinelli, do you have a question or comment?
I do have a question, actually, to Councillor Bresciani. So this has been a problem in our society forever. We have changing legislation. It's brought us to the point we are right now by making extra regulation on a new, I don't want to call it an industry because it's not a new industry, but a way of treating an industry. Do you have any fear that we're going to make it so onerous for people to participate in the avenues provided that we'll just continue to have it underground and grow in an uncontrolled way as the previous years we've led up to this point?
Councillor Bresciani?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Mancinelli. No, I think that this is something that I think just no different than cannabis. This has been an industry that's been here for a long time, but this is new waters for us. And I think that we need to be, I think we could start in this regard, in the fact that we start it for every 6 months. And I think it also sends a message to the owners and the operators. We know this industry is highly connected to organized crime. We know that, that's proven. So I think this is a first step, that it sends a message that the owners need to be clean. And I don't think there's anything wrong with this. And after the year review, we can take a look at it. And if it's a recommendation through Regina Police Service that they say that this is something maybe we could lax, then I would support that. But I think we should be looking at this to begin with to ensure that we're getting the owners and the operators here and that they are keeping a standard free from any illegal activity.
Thank you. Councillor Mancinelli, anything else? Councillor Mancinelli, anything else? I'm going to move on. Councillor Flagel, do you have a question or comment on the change to 6 months?
Yes. I'm just wondering what kind of a precedent we're setting when we go to this, and it's 6 months for this, then we go to all the other organizations that require criminal checks. Are we going to be standardizing this across the board? And my other thought is, what's the feedback from RPS on this? I know you talked to some people away, but administration and maybe Councillor Bresciani, the 2 points are that are we going to set a precedent that everybody, because if we're gonna isolate these people, what about all the other charities and all the other working groups and all the other things that go on? Do we change it from 1 year to 6 months for everybody, or are we just going to isolate these people? And the second point is, where is RPS on this and what do they think? And I noticed, Councilor Bresciani, you mentioned we'll see and we'll review it with RPS after, but have we talked to RPS about this?
So I take that as a question to our administration. So, Mr. Wary, I'll turn to you first.
Thanks.
Mr. Chair, the first question, Councillor Flagel, it's important to distinguish between criminal record checks to allow people to work for volunteer organizations versus criminal record checks that are a condition of obtaining a license for something. So we have this in place for our taxi industry now. And so I don't think it sets a precedent necessarily. But I do want to just reinforce the point that the police do have the ability in the course of the year, if they come into possession of information that would result in them, they have the authority and the ability to revoke their approval at any time during the year if they come into information that they need to act on. So just wanted to reinforce that point for members of committee, that that's the process that's currently in place for taxis. License can be revoked in year. We don't have to wait until the renewal of the license to revoke a license in appropriate circumstances, and it would be the same thing here. So if we didn't have that in place, the 6 month might make more sense if that was the only time that we were actually reviewing these operators and owners, but this is an ongoing responsibility of the police service to monitor, and so we think the year will work. Certainly we can make 6 months work as well. It's just going to be more administrative cost to run through that process more frequently.
Councillor Flagel, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just on the...
I want you to speak up, please. You're a little bit muffled.
Sorry. My comment would still be that I see that I didn't realize that we had that in place as of today, and that's good to know, and that the police have the right, and I think we talked about that at length about this, and I believe in that. The last comment I have is that if we already have this in place, we just need to get the ball rolling and get things going, because we've been talking about this forever, and if it's about protecting the workers, I think sounds like we've got that in place, whether it's 6 months or a year. But if the police have the opportunity to walk in anytime and either request or shut it down, then it could be a 1 month license and it wouldn't matter, because they could go in 3 days and do the same thing. So if it's a year and we've got the ability to walk in, I think I'd be good with that. I mean, if we need to change it to 6, it's just going to cost the city more money in administration, and they still have the same right to walk in and do what they need to do. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, do you want to comment on this?
I do, yes. Thank you very much. I have a question of the administration. Within the regulations of other provinces or other cities, do they require criminal record checks every 6 months or every year? So would we be the anomaly, or would we be what other cities do?
I'll ask the Ms. Schakowsky or Mr. Kalman to answer that, please.
Okay, Ms. Schakowsky.
Through the chair, most of the municipalities required annual licenses, including the criminal record check process as well. So they were generally 1 year.
Thank you.
Cool. I would tend to agree that we already have something in place, that there is many opportunities here. Don't see the need for 6 months. Councillor Bresciani, the last word goes to you.
Okay, just very briefly, I think by bringing it to 6 months, at least for this first year, I think it sends a message to the owners and the operators that criminal activity will not be tolerated in our city, and that means anything we know that these are connected to or can be connected to organized crime. So it sends a message that they need to be clean. So I think that when things become gray and it's very hard for police to go in after and they might get a tip here and there, it's very, again, we've heard this over and over, very hard to prove. So when we add in the extra, the 6 months, at least we know that these owners are actually here. They're not just flying in for the 1 year check and they're gone. So I'll leave it there.
Thanks very much. I'll ask the clerk to do a roll call, please.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Just for the benefit of members of council as well as the public, we have 10 members attending today. Councillor Murray is not present at this meeting. I will begin with you, Councillor Bresciani, please.
In favor.
Councillor Young.
Not in favor.
Councillor Hawkins.
Opposed.
Councillor Stevens.
Opposed.
Councillor Findura.
In favor.
Councillor Bryce.
In favor.
Councillor O'Donnell.
Opposed.
Councillor Mancinelli.
Opposed?
Councillor Flagel.
Opposed.
Mayor Fougere.
I vote yes.
The amendment is defeated. It goes down as a vote of 6-4 against.
Thank you. Councillor Bresciani, you still have the floor on the main motion.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So the next I would like to is talk about is licensing the workers. And in the very first paragraph of the licensing the body rub establishments, it says, municipal research indicates that licensing both the body rub establishment owner and operator and the workers is the most common approach. In the research that I've done and the people that that I've talked to both in other cities, one being Toronto, where there's lots going on there. One of the questions that I asked this individual who has done this for over 10 years has indicated that this, when these, if you look at the cities that have not licensed the workers, his words were, those have become key ports to human trafficking. And I don't want that for our city. I think it's very vitally important that we license the workers. And what we know too is that this industry has a high potential of victimization connected to organized crime, but also protecting these women, developing a relationship. It's all about the safety. We talked about that. So in the report, and I'm going to ask this for legal, it talks about, well, we want the Freedom of Information Act so they don't, I guess, become known in the community or however there's someone can, but I think, can I just ask, if someone was to go and ask about a question about a worker through legal, through the Freedom of Information Act, they don't always get that, and I think that, I mean, that that's not going to work in other cities. So why was that a real concern for our administration?
Mr. Ware?
Well, I'll speak to the legal question, then I'll ask Ms. Schakowsky to speak to the policy rationale for the decision not to include licensing of workers in this. And I would remind members of committee that was the direction that was provided to us previously, so that's why the recommendation is what is currently in there. Obviously, yes. It's within committee's prerogative to change the policy direction, of course. We looked at the privacy and access issue as if individual workers were licensed, they are like any other licensee. There's certain things that would have to be contained on the license, including the identification of the individual, other personal information that would be included. So what we concluded from a legal perspective is that what would need to be disclosed would be the name of the individual who holds the license. The personal information would be protected, other personal information, but the name of the individual is something that in our view could not be masked as part of proper disclosure under the LA FOIP responsibilities that the city has when setting up licensing schemes like this. So that's the legal rationale for why our view is that it can't be protected in its entirety. So that was the legal rationale around the LA FOIP issue. And then I'll ask Ms. Schakowsky just to speak to some of the consultation that was done with with the workers and the broader sector. So turn it
Cool.
over to her.
Through the chair, yes, I will confirm that the direction that we received at the council meeting in September of 2019 was to go forward with a program that included only licensing the businesses, the owners and operators. We of course included an option to license the workers, identifying that privacy concerns with releasing their names, if they were ever requested, was a concern for those within the industry. However, we have included in the licensing program the requirement that the owners and operators do have to require specific information, obtain and maintain information from any worker that's working out of their facility, which includes government issued identification, their names, aliases, pseudonyms, ensuring they're over 18 years of age, that they've completed the education programs, they're legally eligible to work in Canada, they received a certificate of approval from the RPS. Now, not only do these establishments need to obtain that information from all of the workers, but at any point of time upon request from a City of Regina license inspector or the Regina Police Service, they must provide that information to those officials.
Thank you. So did we actually reach out to any cities that have asked about this and see the benefit of licensing rather than not licensing? Because the majority license the workers through the chair.
We completed through the chair, we completed the research and did identify that other municipalities were licensing the workers. We do know that a concern for workers in the other cities was the privacy with possibly having to release their name, but did not receive any feedback from municipalities where there were any concerns other than that.
Great, thank you for that. I provided a contact in Toronto that's done this for about 10 or 12 years. Exactly this, what we're asking our city staff to go in, an officer. Do you know if that individual was contacted by the City of Regina?
Through the chair, I had not received contact.
Okay. I really feel strongly that licensing the workers is vitally important. And I know that when we talk about, and it is in the option here of moving, having an amendment to license the workers. So I would like to make a motion that we do license the workers under the recommendation, I guess, of the ones that's in the report.
Okay, so are you okay with the wording there?
So we have attendance in person to produce government-issued photo identification containing legal name and age to be at least 18 years. List of all aliases. Yeah, the proof of completion of the body rub education program. Legally be eligible to work in Canada. And in there, I would like to indicate proof of permanent resident, so a PR. And I'll just continue here and I'll go back to that. Certificate of approval from Regina Police Service and the submit license fee of $100. The reason I put in there permanent resident is the fact that some of these individuals will come in on a visitor or a student visa, and they will indicate in the body rub that they are there maybe cleaning or they're doing reception work, but really they're working in the establishment. So it would be the proof of a permanent resident here, and of also Canadian citizenship. So let's see. I really feel strongly that most of Canada has gone in this route. When you talk to people in the industry, this is one of the key components to protecting the women. The women have to come in themselves. One of the things in conversation today was that sometimes if they actually come in with another individual that has their information, that's one of the first things when you consider someone being trafficked. And we would never see it that way. I would see it as someone's coming in to help them. But this industry is different. And I think we need to be very, very careful, and we want to protect the workers. We want to make sure that they are there at their own will. And this will do that. If we don't do this and we just allow the owners to provide the information, we're really saying you self-govern yourself. That's really what we're doing. We're allowing them to bring in all the information on the workers. Yes, we'll get in there after, but I think it's vitally important that there's a connection starting with the City of Regina, that they're working here. They come in and it starts almost some kind of it's a trust factor. And that's where it starts. So I think that this would be, this is vitally, vitally important to protect the workers, to protect the women that are going to be working in these establishments. And I will leave it there.
Thank you. I will follow the same process I did previously, but I will do so in reverse order. I'll go to the mayor first. Do you wish to comment on the amendment?
Well, the amendment is clear. I'm just would ask the administration if when we talk about legally eligible to work in Canada, would that not include permanent residency? I mean, I'm just wondering if that's a redundant process here, because even if you're here working, coming in as a student or a visitor, you're not eligible to work in Canada. So I'm just wondering if that line of proof of permanent residency is in fact redundant. To the administration.
Mr. Wary, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll refer that question to the project team to see if they've looked at that specific question and whether that definition or that direction from committee, if approved, is sufficient.
Thanks. Ms. Schakowsky, please.
Through the chair, we have not looked at that closely, but my understanding is it would be redundant.
Thank you.
Councillor Flegel, comments on the amendment?
No, I'm good.
Thank you. Councillor Mancinelli, please.
Question to administration. With the Freedom of Information Act and the names on this licensing motion, is there anyone we could lobby to possibly have this locked, or is there any protections we can put in place for the people's names who would have these licenses?
Mr. Chair, I mean, there is always the ability to lobby the provincial government to make exemptions or exceptions in the LA FOIP privacy legislation. But I'm not sure we've been successful recently in that regard. But that would be probably the way that it would need to be done. I mean, there are exceptions that do come into play on a fact-specific basis that may allow, in a case-by-case basis, for more information to be protected. But as a general principle, we don't think it would apply in this particular context.
Thank you. Councillor Mancinelli.
What kind of undertaking would it be to rattle that tree to see if we could get that exception applied to this?
We probably would need to be a direction of council to bring that forward, to make a submission to the provincial government. Would be my advice to committee, is that it would have to be something that is endorsed by city council. It would have more force and have more chance of success. I'm not suggesting we're going to get that if we ask for it, but certainly that would probably be the preferred way to do it.
And Councillor Metzner, I'm going to let the mayor comment on this, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a comment on this. On the one hand, there is I would suggest, an onerous, long process for legislative changes, where the province will say once every 1 or 2 years, they'll do a sweeping question of municipalities. Do you want any changes to the Cities Act or other legal instruments? That's one comment. The other one is certainly it's through the City Mayor's Caucus, through SUMA, and others could make representations to the province of some protection, which would be more quickly and a more robust commentary if we have other cities agreeing to this at the front end. So just a thought there that the legislative changes are take a long time, but the conversation can begin with the City Mayor's Caucus and SUMA to address that issue.
And Councillor, you have the opportunity through resolution of council to take it to the floor of the Municipalities of Saskatchewan Conference and address it directly with the cabinet and the premier of the day. So that's something you might want to keep in your back pocket.
Well, I'll just be into SUMA before. I think instead I'll ask the next question. Through the chair to the mayor's comments, is that something you would be interested in undertaking, Mr. Mayor?
Well, that's one avenue, yes. If we have a consensus from council, of course, not just executive committee, but from council. But I do think that to Councillor O'Donnell's point, more specifically, in the next few months, there is an opportunity at the next convention to have a motion to the floor of SUMA and a question asked directly to members of cabinet and the premier about this. So that's even a more expeditious way to raise the issue.
Okay, my only worries were with the amount of smaller communities in this convention in Florida, they get buried to the side. But, I did have one more question. Actually, just a comment. I really do like the licensing regime, but I can't at all envision it being used because of the repercussions. If I was in the situation that I had to take this employment, the last thing I would want to do is have my name attached to it forever. And I think without the proper changes, this would just pretty much take the harm reduction out of the program, so I can't support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bryce, do you wish to comment?
I'll just have a couple of comments. There's many different lines of work out there that you do have your name attached to forever. So I'm in agreement with this. If we're looking at the safety of the workers and having everything above board, this is the way to go about it. So I'm in agreement with it.
Okay. Councillor Van Der, would you like to comment?
Mr. Chair, no, I agree with the amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Stevens, please.
Great, thank you. Through the chair, I will recommend that we do not pursue this amendment for many reasons. While I appreciate the sentiment, there is one consensus amongst experts and sex worker advocates, and that is do not force those sex workers to license. While other municipalities might do that, it's against all the recommendations of those in the know. So while I understand the fear of trafficking, this will do nothing of the sort. What it will do is create a second tier of establishments. We'll have relatively safe, more surveilled and more highly regulated spaces in accordance with these rules. And we'll have another stream of potential newcomers, and based on the assumption that these are trafficked individuals. And I don't think the logic of Edmonton, Vancouver, and Toronto hold true in Regina. In fact, none of the evidence I've seen suggests that. So this amendment will run counter to the intention of administration and their research. So again, If we're concerned about the well-being of these workers, the stigma attached to this work as well, we should not be supporting this amendment. It does not advance our initial intention or the policy objectives. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Hawkins, please. Comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question of the administration. I note that Saskatoon requires the licensing of workers, and I'm wondering if in your research you were able to determine why Saskatoon went down that route.
Mr. Ware?
Yes, we have been in contact with Saskatoon as their program has been in place for several years. But I'll ask Ms. Schakowsky and the team to comment on Councillor's question.
Through the chair, yes, we have been in contact with Saskatoon. The question as to why they landed on licensing their workers had not been brought up. Their program had been in place for a number of years. They did express the concern that some of the workers have with licensing and having their information be publicly accessible to those that requested it.
Mr. Chair, just as a follow-up to this, in your discussion with Saskatoon, did they indicate whether their experience was that this kind of licensing requirement was driving workers underground?
Ms. Schakowsky, have you got a answer for that?
Through the chair, Saskatoon had identified that they had reduced, through their licensing program, they had reduced the number of establishments that had been operating within their city by following the licensing program that they implemented.
Thank you. Councillor Hawkins?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good. Councillor Young, would you like to comment?
Yes. I have two questions. One is for the administration. One of the reasons that licensing workers was put aside for me was the amount of contact that would be happening with outreach, both by the city and by the RPS, to the owners and to the workers, and the kind of relationship that would be built so that there would be lots of information about what's happening. And so my question is, what kind of a relationship is expected between the city and the owner and workers and the RPS?
Through the chair, we expect that both the city license inspector and the Regina Police Service, both organizations, were going to be dedicating an individual to support this licensing program and be in contact, making visits to the establishments, checking on the well-being, requesting information that the owners were keeping from the workers that operate out of that building, and also just providing that outreach, providing them with our contact information, so should they have concerns themselves, that they can reach out to either the city license inspector or the Regina Police Service at any time during the year.
Okay, and they would also have contact with educators that might be running the education program as well, through the chair?
Through the chair, that is correct, and our expectation was also being able to provide some additional online information for the workers should they be looking to refresh their learning or information that we're providing to them through the education programs.
Okay, so based on that, Mr. Chair, I'm going to not support this for two reasons. One is that I would like to see this happen for a period of time, and I believe you mentioned at the start of this that there should be a report to council within a reasonable period of time. And at that time, if we needed to do more, we could. And secondly, and perhaps most important, is that some of these people we know have families and children in school, and having their name out there, they could compromise the safety of their own families and children, and they could be accosted by people who don't have their safety in mind. And so for that reason, I'm not going to support this. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I will also comment, I will not be supporting the amendment. I believe that council gave a clear direction to the administration on how to proceed on this. That is before us. I believe that what is built into this report needs to have some time to work. And so again, as an undertaking, I'm expecting that a little over a year from now or a year after the start of this program, the council will have every opportunity to review and make any amendments. But we've already made a decision on this. Councillor Brashani, briefly, the last word goes to you.
Thank you. Well, I will just say that this is vitally important for our city, vitally important to protect the women. And this is not an industry that I think is your typical business that we have dealt with before. We're licensing sex workers. We're licensing owners so they can sell sex. These women, some are working at their own will and some are not. We as a city need to protect all of the residents as much as we can, but workers in these establishments. And I believe by ensuring that they actually come in and provide their forms and give all the information, they may ask questions about employment at that time, other employment. It's another time to build a connection with these workers. I am absolutely disappointed that we can sit here as a city and say that we've done our due diligence when the rest, and mostly across Canada, 3/4, this is a priority that they license the workers. Why? Because they know they're vulnerable. That's why they know they're vulnerable workers. And we as a city say, owners, bring in their information and do what you want. So I will be standing strong that we need to support this to protect the workers. That's all I've heard come out of every councillor. We need to protect the workers. It's about the safety. This is one more step to ensure that they're there at their free will. I ask you to support this. Thank you.
Thanks. That concludes the debate on the amendment. I'll ask the clerk to please do the roll call. I also got a note from Councillor Flago that he may not be present, but I will still ask the clerk to ask if he is so that he can vote.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I will begin with you, Councillor Bresciani, on the amendment, please.
In support.
Councillor Findura.
In favor.
Councillor Bryce.
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli.
Opposed.
Councillor Flago.
In favor.
Councillor Young.
I'm opposed.
Councillor Hawkins.
In favor.
Councillor Stevens.
Opposed.
Mayor Fougere.
Vote yes.
Councillor O'Donnell.
Opposed.
The motion is carried 6-4, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Okay, so the report is now amended. Councillor Brashani, you've had the floor for some time. I have many other speakers. Do you have anything else on the main motion as amended?
That's all I have. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Are you finished?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, thanks.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay, good, thanks. Councillor Young, you are the next one, and I'm going to get you to help me because I should have asked previously to have a motion to have this on the floor. Would you please pass that motion first?
Yes, I would.
I thank you for that. You go ahead. The floor is yours.
All of my questions have been answered, so I have no others. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hawkins, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two areas that I'd like to explore briefly. The first is, I have a question for the administration on the fee of $630 for licensing. How was that fee determined? How was that number arrived at?
Mr. Shikowski, if you don't mind.
Through the chair, that was by looking or comparing the costs to what other municipalities were doing, especially Edmonton. The cost is not full cost recovery as identified in the report. However, doing so impacts the effectiveness of the program, and therefore we recommended a fee that was in line with what Edmonton was offering or charging. And the reason why we chose Edmonton was because they were the only other municipality that was offering an education program similar to what we were proposing in this program.
For you, Mr. Chair, to follow up on that, can you give me the range of fees that other municipalities were charging?
Through the chair, they range from $50 up to $13,614.
I'm wondering if you picked Edmonton. Can you maybe give me an idea of what some other cities were charging comparable to size of Regina, maybe Winnipeg, Calgary, Saskatoon, those kinds of cities?
Through the chair, Winnipeg charges $4,850 for the body rub parlor, and for a practitioner, it's $355. Saskatoon is $500 for the establishment and $250 for, it's $500 for the body rub establishment, $200 for a renewal every year afterwards. And for the workers, it's $250 for a new license and $100 each year for a renewal.
Calgary?
Calgary. Sorry, I'm just checking my notes. Calgary is $170 for the body rub establishment, and $130 for the annual renewal fee. For the workers, it's $170 for a new individual and $130 for a renewal afterwards.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, I note in the chart that we're presented, depending on the number of locations, that the cost to the taxpayers of Regina of this licensing program runs between $8,700 and $5,700. My concern is that at $630, the suggested fee, the subsidy that the taxpayers are paying the industry is just too high. In other words, I think that we need to recover more of our cost than just the $630. And I particularly am aware that if you charge a fee that's too great, you may drive compliance down. But I think $630 is too low. in light of the cost to the city of regulating this industry. So I'm going to move a motion, Mr. Chair, that the fee in question be raised to $1,200.
Thank you. I'll let the clerk, deputy clerk, get that up. And maybe I'll just ask the obvious question as you perhaps comment. You picked the number of 1,200 for what reason, if you don't mind?
It's I acknowledge that in some senses it's arbitrary, but I think at least it goes a better part of the way to covering our city's cost of regulating this. And I don't think it's so high that it will be avoided, that it'll be driven underground. Acknowledging that this is a judgment call, I just think that $1,200 is closer to the appropriate mark. And I think the citizens of Regina would be a little bit more comfortable knowing that we were not subsidizing this industry to the extent suggested by the lower $630 fee.
Thanks for that. I think the deputy clerk is still working on it, but I think the intent is pretty clear. So I will do, again, the same kind of roll call if people would like to comment. Councillor Young, I'll begin with you. Would you like to comment on the fee?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stevens, would you like to comment?
Question for administration. How much is cost recovery for bylaw enforcement in Regina?
I can,
if you don't
take
mind,
a crack at that. I assume the councillor is referring to the cost of the bylaw enforcement department or branch, rather. So yes. That would be all of the staffing costs of that branch and the associated facilities and vehicles. Some of that is not included in, most of what's included in the budget for that area is staffing and some contracted services. And then there's also the associated legal cost of providing legal support, whether it's advice or representation on bylaw enforcement matters in bylaw court or in superior court. So I don't have the number at my fingertips right now, but I would expect it would be, I can undertake to provide the precise information between now and the council meeting when this will be considered.
Through the chair, I don't need the precise number. I guess the simple answer is bylaw enforcement a cost recovery department?
No, it's not.
Yeah, they're in.
Thank you. Is the Regina Police Service a cost recovery service?
When you walk into the door, open up. First.
For enforcement, no, it's not. It's.
I don't know. I'm just.
Thank you. John, can you turn your mic off, please?
Yeah, John, you're speaking, please. We can hear you.
Through the chair, when building inspectors are dispatched to investigate or to conduct an inspection, are any of those services cost recovery?
They're not cost recovery. It would be the same as bylaw enforcement. There are certain fees and permits that are required that are perhaps different than what you would have for much bylaw enforcement, which is just violation of the community standards bylaw. So there is no revenue that's coming in that would be used to offset some of the administrative cost as there is with building or development permits and things of that nature.
Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair, to Councillor Hawkins, why is it okay that Regina Police Service, bylaw enforcement, and virtually every other city service is not a cost recovery model, but that this harm reduction policy needs to be a fully or close to fully cost recovery?
Councillor Hawkins, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two answers to that. First is the motion does not say that this should be cost recovery. The motion just says that 630 is too low. 1,200 is more reasonable, and I remind Councillor Stevens that even at 1,200, we're 4 times under the lowest of the cost recovery. So what I'm proposing here is a long way from cost recovery. That's the first point. And the second point is the we are examining now, and we'll have a report back to council on our bylaw enforcement mechanisms. That report will be back shortly, and one of the things that we're looking at in that study is how bylaw enforcement can be more costly recovery. I'm thinking in particular in when the city has to go in and cut weeds on property. So the answer to Council Stevens' question is simply that I'm not proposing cost recovery. I'm just proposing something that will help the city recover a small portion of what are very extensive costs of regulating the body rub industry.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Bershani, comment on the fee.
No, I'm fine.
Thank you. Councillor Fundura, comment on the fee.
No comment.
Thank you. Councillor Bryce, comment on the fee.
I would just like to say I'm in favor of increasing it for sure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mancinelli.
Yeah, I guess I have a comment. When approaching this matter, I've always come from the point of harm reduction right from the start. Through all the changes, through both zoning and now through this legislation, we've slowly boxed it in to be what it was before the federal government changes. I can't really see a path towards harm reduction from everything we're doing. I'm going to vote in favor of the fee. I think as a whole, we have done nothing but paint back the picture we had before to make sure we have the same problems as before, if not increasing. So I'm thinking if we put everything in there, maybe at the end we'll come up, cancel it, vote against it, and maybe reshuffle and come again at it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Flegel, are you there? I'm going to assume that he has left now. Mr. Mayor, would you like to comment?
Yes, thank you. I have just one question of the administration with respect to cost recovery. What would be the cost recovery for a license? Do you know what that would be? Given the number of establishments we have, to assume we have the same number of establishments when this is approved, do you know what that would be?
Yes, well, it would have to be an estimate based.
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah, and so what we have in here is in the report is really an estimate based on the number of locations. So that was just the number of business locations. Yes. So it would not include the licensing and individual workers. We'd have to build that into the costing and the cost recovery model. But I think what's included in there really is the staffing costs and the training program that we talked about. And then from there, there's an important qualifier in there that this doesn't include legal costs of enforcement, which are, depending on how many actions we'd have to take forward, would dictate how much legal time would be spent on it. So it's, to answer the mayor's question, I think the chart at the bottom of page 6 is probably our best advice in terms of what getting close to cost recovery would be for the staffing costs and the basic. If you wanted full cost recovery in terms of the costs of housing these people and their equipment and their vehicle and the rest of that obviously isn't included in this. But so that's.
Thank you for that. I think I'm going to support the amendment. I think it's reasonable. We know that under the Cities Act, we are not allowed to charge more than what the service is to be provided. So I think this is reasonable. It's also moving forward to some form of cost recovery, and I think this therefore is defensible. And I don't think it is onerous either. I know I don't think it's fair to be comparing the police service cost recovery to this. This is licensing. It is not providing the service as you have with the police service. So I think the amendment is reasonable and fair, and I'll support it.
Thank you. I will comment that I am empathetic to the notion that is here, that is to the fee. I just work from the notion that we want to make sure that we in fact get compliance on all of these things. Having said that, I don't see this as being particularly onerous for the business. So at this point, I will support as well. Councillor Hawkins, you have the last word briefly, please.
I have nothing further to add. Thank you.
Thanks for that. I'll ask the clerk to do the call, and we know that we now have 2 absent.
With respect to the amendment, I will call on you, Councillor Hawkins, please.
In favor.
Councillor Young.
In favor.
Councillor Stevens.
Opposed.
Councillor Bresciani.
In favor.
Councillor Findura.
In favor.
Councillor Bryce.
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli.
In favor.
Mayor Fougere.
I vote yes.
Councillor O'Donnell.
In favor.
It passes 8-1, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thanks very much. Councillor Hawkins, the floor is still yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have one other matter to raise. With respect to violations, I note in the report that the administration has said that administration recommends that fines for BRE violations will be subject to determination by a court upon conviction to the maximum amount prescribed in the Cities Act. My question is, what is the maximum amount prescribed in the Cities Act, and are any other indication of fine levels, appropriate fine levels, given there?
Mr. Ware, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I should know this off the top of my head, but unfortunately I don't. I'll maybe look to Ms. Atchison. There are 2 sets of maximums. There's a maximum amount for an individual, and then there's a higher maximum amount for businesses. But I'll just ask Ms. Atchison to refresh my memory on what those monetary numbers are.
Ms. Atchison, please.
Yes, through the chair. In the case of an individual, the maximum is $10,000. And in the case of a corporation, it's $25,000. There's also, if it's a continuing offense, a maximum daily fine of $2,500 for each day it continues.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A follow-up question on that. Does City Council have jurisdiction to place a minimum fine for an offense? Do we have jurisdiction under the Cities Act to do that?
I can answer that one. Yes, we do have that. We don't always recommend that as to at least allow for some discretion depending on the nature of the violation. So we don't, sometimes it can have the effect of tying our hands, and it sometimes is preferable when you are going to court with a serious violation. The minimum, minimum fine is sometimes can be counterproductive to effective enforcement. If it's more of a high volume type of violation, then it might be a case where a minimum fine is appropriate. Given the nature of the violations here, and as Ms. Atchison has said, in this instance, we may have a concern about a continuing offense that creating minimum fines might interfere with. So don't believe that we would recommend building in minimum fines for these types of offenses.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I need to follow up with one further question on this. I'm particularly concerned with one kind of offense, and that is a failure to obtain a business license. And I'm concerned that the fine not be so low that it in effect results in the owner failing to obtain a business license and then treating any fine as just not as a deterrent, but just as a license not to seek the license in the first place. So I'd like to get the city solicitor's opinion on, say we set a minimum of fine for that offense, which is a violation dealt with in the report of $2,000. Do you think that would tie the city's hands in any way in court, or would it show the court that we were being serious, that we expect owners to get a business license?
I don't think there would be a problem with that. I think what we would look at then would be this idea, if it's a continuing offense, of just making sure that the language in the bylaw would not prevent us from asserting further penalty of a violation of a continuing nature, which a failure to obtain a business license, we would argue, would potentially fall into that category. So that would cause the fine to increase quite dramatically and be a bit of a lever. But we could certainly build in something We certainly wouldn't recommend that for the individual workers, but we certainly, as discussed, the business side of this, certainly the fine structure can be adapted as necessary. So we could certainly look at that as a possible scenario.
Thank you. That's helpful, Mr. Chair. In light of that, I'd like to move a motion that a minimum fine of $2,000 in the case of an individual worker for a first offense be $2,000.
Owner operator, I'm assuming you mean.
Yeah, I do mean the owner operator, yes.
Thank you. We'll let the deputy clerk just put that up. Any other comments on this, Councillor Hawkins?
No other comments, thank you.
Thank you. I will follow the same route. I think the motion is clear. And I will do reverse order. Councillor Mancinelli, I'll go with the mayor first. Comments on the minimum first-time fine?
The only comment I would make, Mr. Chair, is I agree with the amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Mancinelli?
Yeah, I have no comments, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Bryce?
No comments, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor, I'm losing track. Fundura?
No comment, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Brashani?
No comment.
Councillor Stevens?
No.
Thank you. Councillor Young?
No comment.
Thank you. I have none either. Councillor Hawkins, briefly, do you want to finish?
Thank you. Just very briefly, in the motion as posted on the board, it says of a first offense. I think it should probably read for a first offense.
Okay.
Other than that, I have no comment.
Okay. Good. Thanks for that clarity. I will ask for the roll call, please. And again, we're missing two.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I will begin with you. Councillor Hawkins, please.
In favor.
Councillor Stevens.
In favor.
Councillor Bresciani.
In favor.
Councillor Findura.
In favor.
Councillor Bryce.
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli.
In favor.
Councillor Young.
In favor.
Mayor Fougere.
I vote yes.
Councillor O'Donnell.
In favor.
Carries 9-0.
Thanks very much. Councillor Hawkins, the floor is still yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Those are my points. I appreciate the time you've given me.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mancinelli, you're up next.
Thank you. Most of my questions have all been answered already. I guess I just have a comment. So with this legislation, what we're expecting people in an underground illegal industry that's recently come to light to do is step up to us, first of all, change where their location is, and then continue to buy a license, go to school, provide all the pertinent information they have for who they are and what they're all about, pay a large license, as I've mentioned, and to follow all our rules. And I don't think the people who thrive in this industry operate by those rules necessarily. And I think this is going to be too onerous to have any real effect, and I have a fear that this is ineffective legislation that comes back to a waste of tax dollars in the end. And because of that, I'm very, very not satisfied with it myself. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Bryce, you're up next.
Thank you. I'm opposed as right from the start of licensing for an illegal activity. And that's what we are looking at doing here. And I disagree with it. So I can't support the motion as amended, even, because it does say that, in my mind, it says that we're okay with licensing the sex trade, and I'm not okay with that. So that's all I have to say on it.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Councillor Findura, next.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. My comment would be, first question, I guess, to the, this is going on on the main motion. So the first question would be, in the bylaw that's said now, is that the police will have to announce themselves to give a notice to enter any of these establishments. Am I reading that correctly? Sure.
Ms. Schakowsky or Mr. Wary?
I'll refer to Ms. Schakowsky or perhaps Ms. Atchison to speak to some of the inspection powers that we anticipate will be included.
Thank you.
Through the chair, it's Crystal Atchison from Legal. The inspection powers are set out in the Cities Act, and so the bylaw would just reference all the inspection powers in the Cities Act, which does require us to provide notice before entering. Of course, if the police were doing a criminal investigation, they would be relying on their police powers for criminal investigation. The Cities Act powers are related to doing an investigation for the purposes of licensing.
Councillor Fundura.
Okay, great. Thank you. There's no point of making any other amendments to that, so that explains how I feel going forward. Mr. Chair, I voted against the whole establishments and whatever but the body rub establishments, I voted all the way through against it, and I will do the same on the main motion. I did supported some of the amendments, but I still can't see it being legalized and all that, and even being allowed here. This is the very first. We've done it with the strip clubs. We voted against it. I'm standing same. I'm voting no to the main motion. I supported the amendments. It made sense, but even though right from the start we voted against it, so I'm not going to support the main motion. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bryce.
Thank you. I just have one question because we talked about the information and the conversations we've had with the workers and the owners. What kind of conversations have we had with the community as a whole and those in the community who have concerns about this kind of trade happening?
Well, I will offer a little bit of a comment, but also look to the administration. We've had a series of public meetings here where we've had many delegations have the opportunity to speak and be representative of many. I've lost track of how many times we've talked on this issue, but it is significant compared to others. So I'll turn to the administration if there's more.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There was a structured public consultation that was done, but it was some time ago. So I'll ask Ms. Schakowsky to fill in any gaps there.
Through the chair, yes, there were numerous opportunities for the public to attend sessions and share their views with administration. I can't remember the actual number of sessions that we had, but we had sessions for the general public and also individual sessions for owners and operators and individual licensed workers, and we had a number of residents not in the industry attend the engagement sessions. I think there was a week's worth of engagement sessions that were well attended.
Thank you. Councillor Bryce.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of comments. I have no questions, and it's been a good discussion. It's been a long process getting to this point, and we'll be going to council at the end of this month, and hopefully we can move on from other issues. But it's been an enlightening conversation, to be sure. I struggled with this and didn't support this at the very beginning, with respect to firstly the zoning and then now the licensing. And for me, the harm reduction strategy is to not attempt to license it. Was a criminal activity. Public safety, much the same measure. But the amendments that have been made today, Mr. Chair, have strengthened the determination of council. They've decided already that we want to have zoning of this. Consequently, if you're going to be zoning something, you have to license it as well. So those provisions that the four changes that have been brought forward make this a better system of licensing than what was proposed by the administration initially. And I want to thank them for trying to garner discussion and information from across the country on what this would look like. But I do struggle with the issue of supporting an industry that is illegal. And I say that at the very beginning, and I stand by that statement. But the other hand is I do support the issue of the licensing regime in this way. Had it been remaining the same, I would not be supporting it absolutely. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thanks. There are no other people in the chat line. I will make my comments. Just the first one to Mr. Weir, if you don't mind. I started the discussion with the idea that there will be a follow-up. So would it be fair to say sometime in the first quarter of 2022, holy cow, it's a long ways away, that there would be a report back to council just with where things are at and so on for review. So is that a fair undertaking that you would consider being part of this report?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we would probably want to get 1 year's worth of experience, and then it would just be a question of gathering that information, putting it into a report. So I would say Q1 or early Q2 of that year. I'm good with Q2, by the way. So if that could be part of it, I'd be happy. We've had a long discussion on this, and I appreciate the work that's gone into where we are, and I'm prepared now to call the question on this. What do I have to do? Yeah. With the idea that there is an amendment that you all received and that I mentioned in the very beginning that in Appendix B, the hours of 2 a.m. to 10 a.m. are included in the vote that you will take. So that's included because that was an understanding before I asked for a call on the motion. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I will begin with you, Councillor Young, please.
I'm in favor.
Councillor Hawkins.
In favor.
Councillor Stevens.
In favor.
Councillor Bresciani.
Opposed.
Councillor Findura.
Opposed.
Councillor Bryce.
Opposed.
Councillor Mancinelli.
Opposed.
Mayor Fougere.
Vote yes.
Councillor O'Donnell.
In favor.
The motion is carried in a vote of 5-4, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. That ends our public session. May I have a motion for private resolution? Resolution? Yeah. Anyway, can we take a break? Can I have a motion? Mr. Mayor, you've passed that. Thank you. We're going to take a 15-minute break. We're going to return here at 11:15. Thanks very much for your time.